Okay, thank you very much. Today I'm with Dayasara. And I'm just going to ask a few questions today about how the Ipswich Buddhist Centre started, your role within that, and your role within Triratna.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. So what does your name mean, for a start, and what is your role in the centre, in Ipswich Buddhist Centre?
Yeah, good. So Daya means kindliness, and Sara means essence of. So it's certainly a name to live up to, and on a good day, perhaps I might be somewhere near that. But yeah, that's what the name means, It's given to me partly because my preceptor knew about my career in care work, so that was a big part of it. So, yeah.
Oh, so what led you to Ipswich and the Buddhist Centre?
Yeah, well, my whole sort of Buddhist career, as it were, in inverted commas, has been based in a fairly small area. So although I'm originally from the north, and then I was in London, and then I moved to Colchester to teach nurses as a job. And not long after I'd landed there, I started going to the classes in Colchester. So I became a mitra in Colchester. And then I kind of sensed I wanted to do more than that. I wanted to go further. And I had just asked for ordination, in fact, before I moved here. But Sadharaja, who I was doing mitra study with, he said, we're setting up a new community in Ipswich, so would you like to join us? And so I moved here and rented out my flat. And so I was in what age would I have been then? I've been nearly 40 then by the time I moved here. In fact, I was 41, so, and I'd bought a flat in Colchester. But anyway, and everyone else worked in the shop, so, I was doing quite a different type of job. And I was commuting some of the time to Colchester, sometimes to Chelmsford, sometimes to a place over near Cambridge where I was doing some teaching. But I eventually came out of that job in 1999, and that kind of freed me up to go more towards my ordination. And I was involved with the centre, obviously, with living in the Buddhist community and being involved with the classes. I've been involved with things to a greater or lesser extent ever since. And I was on the council, the trustee council for the centre for quite a lot of years. And at one time I was the mitra convener for the men for about 3 years, up until 2011. I kind of had to cut down on some of my commitments because I've had some health things, so I had a seizure at work back in 2011. And then in 2015, I had a series of them on a particular day. And initially it was when I was driving. So, anyway, so that was a bit of a story. So, so at the centre, I do the Tuesday lunchtime class. And I try to get to other events, and I'm involved with some of the festivals and retreats and things like that, and try to get to know people, and just to sort of try to help with with spiritual friendship around the centre and meeting people individually and in groups in different ways.
So you talked about starting your path really in Colchester. What led you to, or what attracted you to the Triratna?
Yeah, well, I've had a great interest in Buddhism for many years, and when I was in London, I had a girlfriend who had been involved with the Buddhist Society, and I used to ask her lots and lots and lots about it. And she'd say, well, one of these days we'll go, But somehow we never did, and that relationship came to an end. But I always had a great interest, and in a curious way, I knew she was involved with the Buddhist Society, and I knew that what was then the FWBL was doing something a bit different, and so when I moved to Colchester, I knew that the London Buddhist Centre was in Bethnal Green. I thought, well, at least that's on the eastern side of London, so I could maybe go there some of the time. But when I rang up, to my great delight, they said, "Oh no, well, there is somebody doing classes now in Colchester," and that's Harsha Prabha. But they said there's this other chap you can ring to get more details, and I rang him, and that was Bodhi Veksa, who hadn't actually been ordained then, but and he was the first person I met through the door at the rented place we had in Colchester. And then Harsha Prabha arrived just after that and was actually then commuting from London. He was living in one of the communities above the London Buddhist Centre. And I've just really been involved ever since, you know.
Right. So you talked about ordination. So can you tell us a little bit who ordained you?
Yeah, sure.
And the kind of what that journey was like.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my preceptor is Ashvajit, who he was ordained himself in the early 1970s. And you know, was around when there was, you know, only a handful of board members, you know, maybe 20 or something, and you know, that kind of thing. So he goes back a long way. Now generally people know who their preceptor is going to be well in advance, but that's a relatively more. But although I was ordained 18 years ago, so it's a while ago now. So in fact, it wasn't always clear who was going to ordain you. You know, you could build up a relationship with somebody and ask them, but quite a lot of people didn't. You know. So I was on a retreat and was given my letter of invitation, and I was sitting at the dinner table talking to another odd member, and he said, "Well, what about Ashvajit as your preceptor?" But I mean, I don't want to play that down, because you know, I had actually studied with Ashvajit quite a lot, and he's you know, he's a man of information, and you know, he's very devoted to Buddhism and very much a disciple of Bhante as well, you know, of Sangharakshita. So that was very good, you know. And myself and Gunasara, we were ordained by Ashvajit, and quite a number of the other order members around here have been ordained by him. So in that way, that wasn't, you know, that wasn't a surprise in a way that we ended up with that relationship, you know. I see him on some of the big order things, but I a couple of years ago I managed to go and actually visit him. He has a little cottage in Wales, and we had some time there. And he also was one of the people for quite a while in Bhante's latter life. He was his secretary, or was helping with his sort of general care and support in latter times as well. He didn't do that right to the end, but in fact, I think even towards the end, he would sometimes deputise for other people. But he's in his 70s himself, you know, so he had to be a bit careful how much he took on, you know. Yeah.
So what was your relationship like with Sangharakshita?
Well, obviously, I was around too late to get to know him well.
Yeah.
But certainly when I was going on the Mitra Convener meetings, and heard quite late in the day, by this time, by the next one you're going on, Bhante will be there and we'll be studying with the Mitra Conveners. So that was quite extraordinary, you know, that he was actually going to be there. You know, it was. I don't know what an example would be, but you know, if you were going to study something and then a real expert, I don't know if that's the right word, but you know, somebody who would, you know, no one else could have brought as much as he did. Because one thing we'd studying, he'd written it himself, I know. And the second one I went on, he also came the second time. So, and that was one of the latter. That was in 2008. That was one of the latter times that he did actually sit and study with a group, and he was full of enthusiasm, and he was very open about anything we wanted to explore in terms of the text and that kind of thing. So that was really great. And I did meet him a number of times after that, when he came to open the centre and when he came back the year after. You know, and I've tried, I've sort of contributed to a lot of different discussions around Sangharakshita. I remember a few years ago when there was talk about his funeral, I did just ask about, when somebody would perhaps be writing his obituary, how would that be handled, and who would take that on, and that kind of thing, So that's been a big area of discussion for me over the years, But it was very strange the day I was doing the lunchtime class on the 30th of October, and I'd actually done another little meditation for the Spill Festival in town, and was then coming here to do the lunchtime class, and I put my phone on at 11 o'clock, and I knew Bant had gone into hospital the day before, and then there was the thing there saying he had died, So the lunchtime class, was quite an extraordinary lunchtime class, Buddha Siha came along, and obviously some of the people who come to the lunchtime class aren't necessarily that connected to Triratna or to Buddhism necessarily, but I don't think we could just do an ordinary day. So we did say, well, in a way, I suppose anything that people have got from any of our classes, Sangharakshita played a major part in us being here at all. We wouldn't be here without him. That kind of thing. So that was a day I'll never forget. I actually came to the live streaming of the funeral. I didn't actually go to the funeral. So I'm in a way, I suppose I do all those things. I also have been very interested with my nursing background and research things with issues around long-term care issues in our movement, both as a possible area for right livelihood and also as a growing need in our order and in our community, and that's an ongoing subject, but in terms of really getting a big project going, that, because I'm now 65 and I've not been driving for the last 4 years and other things. So, in some ways that's it's not, I'm not going to be in a position to do that much, but I produce a newsletter relating long-term care and Buddhist things, and I keep in touch with all the members who are in care homes or have got care needs the best I can. And so that's something I'm very involved with.
Brilliant.
And I'm also working on a writing project called "Was Shakespeare a Buddhist?" Which is another of my interests. Anyone who knows me well will know that this is one of my.
Have you got an answer?
Well, yes and no. Not explicitly, because there weren't any Western Buddhists at that time. But I think he had many Buddhist type insights into people in life and things of that nature,
So, in terms of the Ipswich Buddhist Centre, what do you think is the biggest impact it's had on the town itself?
Yeah.
And what do you hope it has in the future? Are there any things that you hope for?
Sure. Well, I mean, it continues to be true. A lot of people you come across don't know there is a centre here, but a lot of people do know it's here. And walking around town, as I do, particularly with not driving in recent years, sometimes I think, sometimes there's an extraordinary number of people I can see in a day or bump into in a day who at some time or another have been to the centre.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how people sometimes go into, I'm so sorry I haven't been, but I've been so busy. I say, that's fine, just come back whenever you want or whatever, So so often people aren't around, but have an intention of reconnecting at some stage, and that does happen certainly. Sometimes we don't see people for 15 years and they come back. And I've known that happen because I've now been in Ipswich 24 years. So the Buddhist community, we had a rented house for 2.25 years. Then we had a men's community for 11 years on Hadley Road.
Hadley Road, yeah.
And many stories from there. I lived with, I can never remember whether it's 15 or 16 people there, plus a lot of visitors, and one guy whose son used to come every other weekend. He was about 12. Another guy, his young daughter used to come and stay weekends.
So how long did that community last for?
The bigger community was there for 11 years.
Right.
So, but that was sort of Marchaloka 2 in a way. But Marchaloka 1, we were there about 2.25 years. But it was much better at the bigger community. We had a garden and everything. I sold it to some nice people who were quite sympathetic what we'd have been doing there. So I was there on day 1, and I was there on day 3,000, whatever it was. I think wouldn't it be 3,000, would it? But yeah, it would have been. It was a lot of days. Anyway. And just kind of handed over the keys on the last day. But then I've been living at Yanamitras for 10 years.
Yeah.
And we share the house.
Yeah.
Which works very well.
Yeah. Right, well, thank you very much for sharing your history.
Yeah.
And if anyone's interested in coming to the Ipswich Buddhist Centre, then they should look at the website.